Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we're going to be previewing the upcoming season for the Philadelphia 76ers. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Without further ado, let's talk about the Sixers. However, before I think that we can adequately preview the upcoming season for this team, I think that it's important that we reflect upon and discuss the transactions that this team made in the recently concluded NBA offseason. They started off with a busy draft night in which they traded Al Horford, some overseas dude, draft and stash guy, not going to try to pronounce his name, it's something like Michich, the 34th pick and a 2025 protected first-round pick, in exchange for Danny Green and Terrence Ferguson. This is a move I like quite a bit as it frees up some future cap flexibility for the team by moving off of the Horford contract. They also only had to attach one first-round pick, which I thought was not necessarily something that they were going to be able to get away with. I thought that it was going to take multiple firsts to move on from Horford, and they were also able to bring back two wing players, one of which is certainly going to be a valuable guy in your rotation, and another of which could earn himself some minutes because of his skills. Obviously, the guy who is certainly going to be in the rotation is Danny Green, and the young player who, if he can develop some strength and improve his shooting, is Terrence Ferguson. They also traded Josh Richardson in the 36th pick for Seth Curry, which is something very... that was a nice move for this team. Obviously, Josh Richardson is a better player than Seth Curry, not Steph Curry. Josh Richardson is not a better player than Steph Curry, but it's Seth Curry we're talking about here. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the 76ers would have to attach a draft pick in order to acquire Seth, but he also has a longer contract as he has 3 more years of fairly team-friendly number. So having Seth Curry certainly makes more sense to this team. He is also a better fit alongside the 2 stars in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. In the draft, they took Tyrese Maxey with the 21st pick, Isaiah Joe with the 49th pick, and Paul Reed with the 58th pick. The Maxey pick was probably my single favorite pick of the entire night. I think that it's going to be a terrific fit for him playing alongside Ben Simmons, as he's going to be able to stand on the perimeter, space the floor. I think he's going to be a pretty good shooter now that he's going to have the ability to have some really nice looks from 3 on catch and shoot opportunities because of the spacing that Simmons provides for him. He's a high level guy at attacking closeouts. He's going to defend well at the point of attack for this team. I think that playing alongside a big wing like Ben Simmons was about the best result that Maxey could have had. And I also had him ranked 4th on my big board, so obviously I think that this is a complete steal for the 76ers, and I absolutely loved this pick for them. They also took Isaiah Joe with the 49th pick. I don't love Joe, and I think that there were some better players that were still available here at 49, but it makes sense to me as a player who has high shooting potential, and that's certainly valuable in the NBA, especially on a team that has those 2 stars that I mentioned that are very ball dominant and need floor spacers around them in order to function at their highest level. So this pick makes sense, and Paul Reed is just a very interesting flyer as a multi-positional defender who is certainly capable of switching off and guarding players throughout up and down the lineup. He also is a plus rebounder, and if he can figure out how to be an effective offensive player, you've certainly got a high-level front court piece moving forward here. I liked this pick quite a bit for the Sixers. I had Reed listed in my top 40 on my big board. In free agency, they made a few moves on the edges. They signed Dwight Howard to a 1-year minimum to be their backup center. They also signed Justin Anderson to a 2-year deal that is not guaranteed. So overall, the Sixers were very active on draft night and not so active after draft night, but I do think that they've improved their team, and I'm excited to see what they look like for this season. Now that we have reviewed the offseason, I think that we're ready to preview the upcoming season, and when I do this exercise, I lay out my expectations for each player as an individual, and then at the end, combine those expectations and make a prediction for how good I think that the team will be on the season. As always, when I conduct this exercise, I'll begin at the point guard position, where you have to start with Ben Simmons. Simmons is genuinely one of the more interesting players in the entirety of the NBA to me. I think that his ability as a high-level shot creator on the offensive end of the floor, where he's a terrific passer, a strong finisher at the rim, as well as a terrific transition player, makes him an interesting offensive asset. And on the defensive end, he's absolutely terrific. Probably one of the 3 to 5 best defenders in the entire NBA. Certainly one of the best guard defenders. Is an excellent weak side shot blocker. Is capable of taking on difficult matchups up and down the lineup. Can essentially guard 1 through 5 on the defensive end of the floor. And is also a plus rebounder who can grab and go and really push it in transition. I love Ben Simmons, and I think that he has a lot of potential to really reach and become a potential MVP candidate at some point down the line. With Ben Simmons, where he has to improve is the shooting. Now, what gets harped on all the time is the three-point shooting, but I really don't know if it's that big of a deal whether or not he can become a plus three-point shooter. It certainly would be nice if opponents had to respect him on the three-point line off of catch and shoot opportunities at the very least, because then he could be so much more effective as a player who opposing teams actually have to close out on, and that would allow him to attack closeouts at a very high level. But at the very least, he needs to become a better free throw shooter. If he can take his 62% mark from the line and get it closer to 70% while taking more free throws, it seems that sometimes he shies away from trying to finish at the rim because he knows that he's not an efficient free throw shooter, and sometimes he passes up good looks at layups in exchange for kicking it out to a teammate for a three, which is obviously not what you want. Layups come first. Obviously, three-pointers are terrific and a very efficient shot, but when you are a player as strong and efficient at the rim as Ben Simmons is, you'd certainly rather him take the shot there. So if he can improve on those free throws and continue to be the high-level defensive player and great passer that he has been so far, I'm willing to bet on Ben Simmons being something close to like a top 10 to top 12 player in the NBA this season. People have been talking about him taking a jump for each of the past couple of years, and I think that with the addition of Doc Rivers, who from everything I've heard has a lot of faith in Ben Simmons, I'm willing to bet that this is the year that he makes that jump. Next guy here is Tyrese Maxey, who, as I talked about before, was probably my single favorite player in the draft. I had him 4th on my draft board, which is significantly higher than almost any other draft analyst did. But I fell in love with this guy's game, and I really don't see what other people are missing. While he maybe doesn't have the elite burst that other players at the top of or other guards that you would think about taking at the top of the lottery do, I think that he's strong enough, he's very twitchy, and he has terrific hesitation moves that allow him to create some space with his defenders. He has a great pull-up jumper, and if that can translate over to him improving on catch and shoot opportunities, I really think he's going to be a knockdown shooter. He's terrific on the defensive end of the floor because of his strength. He's able to guard pretty much 1 through 3 on that end, and he's a menace on the ball who uses that said strength that I talked about before to create transition opportunities to his team. For his team, where he's a solid but not great playmaker. Overall, I really buy this guy's game, and I think that he's going to be a high-level starter, if not a potential all-star at some point in his career moving forward. And I love this pick for the 76ers. I think it was one of the best places he could have gone to. I think that he can help this team this year. I think he's going to be one of the more impactful rookies right off the rip, and I hope that we can see him get rotational minutes coming off of the bench for this 76ers team. The last point guard here is Isaiah Joe. Like I said before, Joe is a player that I wasn't super high on in the draft, but I understand the Sixers taking him because of his shooting ability. The reasons why I weren't as high on him is because I don't think he's much of a defender. He's not much of a playmaker on the offensive end, and his shot creation abilities are pretty weak. Pretty much all he does is shoot it, and while that is super valuable, I also question his ability to shoot it off of movement. It remains to be seen as well if he's going to be able to put on strength, and if he can't, his durability is in question. I probably wouldn't have drafted Isaiah Joe, certainly not when players like Grant Riller and Cassius Winston were still on the board, but it makes sense to me, and overall, he's a project piece who you're hoping can crack the rotation by the end of his rookie scale deal. Now that we've covered the point guards, we can move on to the wing, where we'll start with Tobias Harris. Harris has an important role on this team as one of the few players, at least last season, who could actually knock down shots off catch and shoot opportunities. He spaced the floor well for Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and was actually a pretty high level player at attacking the closeouts that were created by the open looks that he received by virtue of being a teammate of Ben and Joel. On the defensive end, he's also solid. Overall, he's certainly not worth the steep contract that the 76ers are paying him, but because of his ability to be a tertiary scoring option in this offense, he still can help this team, and I still think that he makes them better. It also could be an interesting wrinkle to their season if he can re-find his former borderline all-star form that he had when he was playing under Doc Rivers the last time in Los Angeles. So Tobias Harris is certainly a useful piece for this team and someone that I expect to be the third leading scorer and hopefully can knock down shots at a high efficiency level and at least be respectable defensively. Next guy here is Danny Green, who I think was one of the more quietly great moves made this offseason. Green is really going to help this team out as a plus defender who can knock down open shots from three. Now, obviously, people are going to point out that he really struggled with the Lakers in the playoffs, but he's been a streaky shooter throughout his career, and I don't necessarily think that a cold streak is a super high implication that his career is coming to a close and that he's going to start declining rapidly. I still think Danny Green is a high-level role player because of his plus defense. He's terrific in transition defense, always seems to make the right decision on whether to stop the ball or go to the cutter on the opposite side. And because of that three-point shooting ability, and at the very least, defenses have to respect him because he's shown that he can be a high-level 38 to 40% shooter in the past. He's still going to help this team. He's going to make them a lot better, and he is the perfect player to put between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Next guy here is Seth Curry, another Sixers acquisition that makes a whole lot of sense. We saw Joel Embiid establish terrific pick and roll chemistry with JJ Redick, and Seth Curry is one of the closest players to JJ Redick in the entire NBA because of his ability to knock down shots off of movement. He's a terrific three-point shooter. There's not too many guys on the entire planet that shoot the ball better than he does. He's also a solid passer and has some shot creation abilities off the dribble. He can knock down shots in the mid-range, and he has a solid floater game as well. He's not much of a finisher at the rim because of his slight frame. He also gets his shot blocked quite a bit. But because of the floor spacing ability and the chemistry that I think that he'll be able to formulate in the pick and roll with Joel Embiid as an excellent option for this team in their offense, I really liked this trade for the Sixers, and I think Seth Curry is going to be a valuable sixth man or maybe fifth starter type player for this team in the upcoming season. Matisse Thybulle is the next guy here. He's able to wreak havoc on the defensive end of the floor, blocks a high percentage of shots despite only being 6'5" and a guard/wing player. He is very impactful in using his instincts to steal the ball away from opponents as well. We saw him post ridiculous steal rates last season, up in the high 3% or low 4% if I'm not mistaken, which is super high level for any player, especially a rookie. He is also a smart team defender. It's not just on ball where he's effective, and he has that super incredible plus wingspan. He has a 7-foot wingspan despite only being 6'5", and that really allows him to be super impactful on the defensive end of the floor. On offense, he struggles a little bit, doesn't have a whole lot of scoring ability off the dribble. He's not a very good passer, and his shot creation stuff is iffy at best. The swing skill with Matisse Thybulle that can either take him from being Andre Roberson and make him into Marcus Smart, but with less shot creation ability, is his shooting. If he can knock down shots I guess Marcus Smart's not a great shooter either, so that's not a terrific comparison, but What I'm trying to say here is if Matisse Thybulle wants to be more than just a defensive stopper, he's going to have to improve his three-point shooting. For long stretches last year, he shot the ball well over 40%, and if you buy into that, then terrific. Matisse Thybulle is certainly a player that you can trust in a playoff rotation and is probably a starter-level player. But if he shoots it closer to like a 30% mark, that I think is probably a better reflection of his true shooting ability right now, that makes him more of an iffy guy, whether or not you're able to actually play him in the rotation when the minutes really count. I think he'll probably be somewhere in between, shoot it in like the 35 to 38% mark, right around league average. Of course, he might shoot it a bit higher than that once again because he's not taking too many difficult shots. A lot of them are wide open catch and shoot looks that are created by virtue of him being a teammate of Ben Simmons. However, with his defensive capabilities, if the shot's going in, then Matisse Thybulle certainly can be an impactful player for this Philadelphia 76ers in this upcoming season. Next guy here is Terrence Ferguson. Ferguson is almost an identical player to Thybulle as a plus athlete who is terrific on the defensive end of the floor, is probably best off guarding plus players at the 1 and the 2 since he doesn't quite have the strength to guard good players at the 3, and he's not necessarily someone you want to throw at a player like Donovan Mitchell or obviously Ben Simmons, even a player like Drew Holiday or Kyle Lowry, guys that are able to use strength in order to score at the basket, because Terrence Ferguson is pretty skinny at the moment and can't necessarily take on that type of matchup. However, if he's able to put on more strength, improve his frame, and put a lot more meat on his bones, then I think that he'll be a very high-level defender at 1 through 3 on the defensive end of the floor. He's also quite good in terms of rotations. The questions come more on offense, where he struggled to shoot the ball this year, which was a very troubling sign considering he doesn't do a whole lot off the dribble. He's going to have to get that three-point shot back going if he wants to be a impactful rotation piece moving forward. But I genuinely believe he can, because he shot the ball pretty well in catch and shoot opportunities prior to this season. So if he can get that shot back on track, I think Terrence Ferguson has a chance to be a sneaky, impactful end of the rotation piece for the 76ers team for this upcoming season. Next guy here is Shake Milton. Milton is a player who I don't really know what to expect from him. He can play multiple positions. He's solid defensively, doesn't make too many high-level impact plays, but also doesn't necessarily get beat too often either. On the offensive end, he's a good shooter and has some ability as a shot creator off the bounce. I think that he's going to be a nice player for this team coming off the bench, and I'm excited to see if he's able to take a step forward past what he did last season. There were certainly a lot of people, especially 76ers fans, that were excited about him heading into the bubble. Next guy here is Ferguson Korkmaz. This guy can really, really play. I think that he is a terrific three-point shooter. I don't even think that that's not exactly in question, as he's a really good shooter. He can also play defense at a solid level. He has some ability to create shots off the dribble. I think that he certainly deserves a spot in a playoff rotation for a team, and he's someone that I'm interested to see where he fits in this hierarchy of 76ers wing players, because there certainly are quite a few of them. Justin Anderson is the next guy here, a Virginia grad who is a pretty good defender but can't shoot it too much because of the limited shooting. I'm not sure that he is going to get too much playing time here. Probably just an end of the bench guy for the Sixers. Mike Scott is the last wing. He's probably more of a 4 than a 3 at this point, and his three-point shooting really isn't all that good, which hurts his reputation as a stretch 4, but he's genuinely pretty solid defensively, and if his three-point shooting can take a jump back towards league average, he's a solid end-of-the-bench rotation guy who can come in and give you like 8 to 12 minutes per night in the playoffs. Now that we've covered the wing position, we're ready to move on to the big men, where we'll start with Joel Embiid. Embiid is terrific defensively, where he's a very high-level rim protector. He's also a plus rebounder because of his insanely large body. And on the offensive end, he's also outstanding. one of the better low post scorers in today's NBA. Probably the single best low post scorer in today's NBA now that I think about it. And he also has shown an ability to shoot the three ball, not at a super high level, but he's at least okay from there. Shot it around 33 to 35% for his career, if I'm not mistaken. So that's certainly respectable and makes him all that more threatening in the two-man game, as he can either dart out to the three-point line to take a three-pointer, get into the short roll where he can make some passing reads, or roll to the basket where he's a terrific finisher. Joel Embiid is a top 15 player in the NBA. There's certainly no disputing that, and you could definitely make a case that he belongs quite a bit higher than that. It remains to be seen if he's going to give effort night in and night out and what kind of shape he's going to be in for this season, but if Joel Embiid is in shape and he's giving good effort every game, watch out, because this guy is ridiculously talented, and he's going to have a shot at being the MVP of the league if he really buys into the 76ers this season. Dwight Howard is the next guy here. I question this signing quite a bit because although he is coming off of a good experience with the Lakers where he won a championship, and his lack of being a great locker room guy didn't really seem to hurt the team because they had many magnificent leaders in LeBron James and Rajon Rondo and Anthony Davis, I question how good he's going to be on this 76ers team where we have a coach who failed to set leadership examples in his last stop with the Clippers in Doc Rivers, and also a team without too many great leaders, as we've seen with Joel Embiid. He's probably the opposite of a good leader, and Ben Simmons hasn't necessarily been a leader for this team either in the last couple of seasons. So I question whether or not Dwight is going to really help this team. I think there's a chance that he's a locker room cancer and someone that they're not really comfortable having on the roster. If he buys in on the same level that he did with the Lakers last year, accepts his role as a bench big man who's there to protect the rim and rebound at a high level, run to the rim and pick and roll opportunities, then he has a chance to be one of the better backup centers in the entire NBA. If he doesn't, there's a chance that he's a major minus just because of the negative stuff he does in the locker room. Next guy here is Tony Bradley, who they essentially got for a bag of chips when they traded Zaire Smith for him, and Smith has been absolute zero since he entered the NBA as a first-round pick in the 2018 NBA draft. Bradley is a pick-and-roll big man who can dart to the rim and finish at a high level above the rim. On the defensive end, he's not very mobile, is mostly limited to being a rim protector where he can block shots at a decent rate. I'm not a big fan of Tony Bradley, and I don't think that he's ready to get too many minutes in an NBA rotation at this point, but he's certainly a solid option as a third big man on a team, and he is a playable guy if either Howard or Embiid gets hurt in this upcoming year, which is certainly possible as those two guys have both shown a propensity to get injured during their careers. Last guy here is Vincent Poirier, who is mostly just an end-of-the-bench guy and someone I wouldn't be surprised to see get cut. Overall, when talking about this team, they have two top 20 players in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They have really good role players surrounding those guys in Tobias Harris, Danny Green, Seth Curry, Matisse Thybulle. I'm willing to throw in Tyrese Maxey and Ferguson Korkmaz into that mix as two players that I like quite a bit. They didn't mesh last year, but I think that they meshed quite a bit this year. They got rid of some talent and didn't necessarily replace all that talent with the same level of talent, but it fits better, and I think that this team's going to be better because of it. I also think that they upgraded at the head coach. Regardless of what you think of Doc Rivers or not, he's probably a better option at that head coaching job than Brett Brown is, and I think that those things in combination, along with the projected Ben Simmons leap that I think that he's going to take, I think that this is going to be a top 2 or 3 team in the Eastern Conference. If this were an 82-game regular season, I could definitely see them winning somewhere between 50 and 55 games. So in this year's shortened 72-game season, I think that they are likely to be a 46 to 50 win team. If I were to be making a bet about this, I think the over-under on their win total is 45.5, and I would definitely take the over on that if I were a betting man. But obviously, I'm only 16, so I'm not. Let me know what you think about the 76ers in the comment section down below. Which of my takes on these players did you agree with? Which did you disagree with? Let me know. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.